So this isn't a video about Avengers Infinity War, but it starts there. It was when I was watching it and I first saw the figure of Ebony Maw, one of Thanos' henchmen, the first major threat that Earth faces in the film. And he strongly resembles an elderly gay orchestra conductor hovering around after our heroes, flapping his arms theatrically. And I got a feeling that I rarely get when watching Marvel Studios movies, namely, this is rubbish, isn't it? I started to wonder whether they were actually in on the joke, which is very unusual as Marvel are normally good at letting you know which bits of their movies you're allowed to laugh at. They allow you to laugh at the idea of a talking raccoon before they make you feel for that character. And it bothered me. I started talking it over with friends who were more into comic books than me, and they all said the same thing. Well, Ebony Maw, he's like that in the comics. And maybe he is. But don't you get tired of that being an all-purpose excuse, that it's like that in the source is the only reason why anything's ever good, it's not like that in the source is the only reason anything's ever bad? It seems to me to be disrespectful to the art of adaptation, which at its best absolutely is an art. So I wanted to make this video. A video about films which have changed the source material in ways that make for a better film. And I'm going to try and keep my own opinions out of it. I'm not going to stand here saying that, the Mandarin twist in Iron Man 3 is brilliant and everyone who disagrees is obviously wrong. Although it is, and I'm absolutely going to go to the wall over that. No, I'm going to look at why things were changed, why they improved the film, and I'm going to put them into 4 categories. The first one is, simply, it makes for a better film. A film isn't a book, after all. The adaptation I'd like to talk about is Bridget O'Connor and Peter Straughn's script for Tomas Alfredsson's film version of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy by John le Carré. It's an interesting film to talk about because you're not just comparing it to le Carré's novel, you're also comparing it to the famous 1970s BBC miniseries starring Alec Guinness. And since that was pretty much universally agreed to be excellent, O'Connor and Straughan could be forgiven for thinking that their work as adapters was done, that all they had to do was go in, cut out several hours from it, and then just present it as a script. But they actually find a lot of new ways into le Carré's novel, and the one that fascinates me the most is the character of Peter Gwilym. Gwilym, you will remember, is played by Benedict Cumberbatch in the film. In the books, Gwilym is a middle-aged MI6 agent who tends to be sent abroad on jobs which require a certain level of, shall we say, physical persuasion. He has a weakness for foreign women and ends up marrying a French woman. Cumberbatch's version of Gwilym is almost entirely different. He's a young office worker, he's secretly gay, he is played by Benedict Cumberbatch, who has done action roles since, but in 2011 wasn't the guy you went to for middle-aged tough guys. So what can justify that level of change to a character? Well, if you're familiar with either the books or the film, you'll notice that the thumbnail description I just gave of Gwilym sounds quite a lot like Ricky Tarr, the character played by Tom Hardy in Alfredson's film. In the book and in the mini-series, those similarities aren't fatal. They're pretty superficial, to be honest. There's plenty of space to differentiate the two characters from each other. But in a 2-hour film, they can't guarantee that there would be that space. So Gwilym and Tarr are made as different as they possibly can be. But it's more than just difference for difference's sake. One of the things that adaptation can do is essentially act like a form of criticism. An adapter asks, what is this book about? How can it be more about what it's about? In the case of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, the book is about betrayal. Gwilym, in the film, is introduced to us as a young office worker who has a rather starry-eyed attitude towards Colin Firth's Bill Haden. This increases the sense of betrayal when he's found out to be a traitor at the end. The fact that Gwillem in this version is gay and Hayden in every version of the story is bisexual means that there's even a slight schoolboy crush element to Gwillem's relationship with him. And also it makes things faster. When the story begins, George Smiley is already retired from MI6. All of the suspects in the mole investigation work at MI6 headquarters. Making Gwillem an office worker thereby gives Smiley a quick and direct route back into that office. So it's a good way to adapt Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, but it might be an even better way to adapt Smiley's people. There's a lot of choices made in O'Connor and Straughn's script that seem custom built to make a really great version of Smiley's people, unlike the TV series where they had to keep the characters of Anne, Smiley's ex-wife, and Carla, his nemesis, in people's heads for weeks of pre-VCR television. In the film, Anne and Carla barely appear, which will make their central appearances in Smiley's people even more impactful. Also, Smiley's people has quite a lot of Gwillem, but it's also got quite a lot of Gwillem and his wife. It's got quite a lot of Gwillem in the field. Obviously, the Cumberbatch version of Gwillem can't do that, so it would provide an excellent excuse to split the role and get Cumberbatch and Hardy back. And, while we're talking about big stars from the first film that can be brought back, the fact that Anne doesn't really appear in Alfredson's film means that her affair with Bill Hayden will have to be dealt with in full in Smiley's people. So they've even got the opportunity to do a full Kingsman 2 and get Colin Firth back despite the fact that he died at the end of the first one. All of these will make for an excellent version of Smiley's people when Alfredson gets around to doing it. Which they are, right? That they are going to do that. The second category is changes that work better for the type of film that is being made. Filmmaking, like novel writing, is a creative process, and any novelist worth their salt will tell you that sometimes the novel that they finish writing isn't exactly the one that they sat down to write. But in filmmaking, it's complicated further by the collaborative nature of the process. Lynne Ramsay's film You Were Never Really Here is based on a novella by Jonathan Ames. Ames is normally known for writing quite urbane, witty, literate New York murder mysteries. You Were Never Really Here is not about that. It was inspired by his fondness for Lee Child's Jack Reacher novels. Ramsay has always clarified that she never sets out to change or subvert the books that she's given. She adapts books because she thinks they would make good movies. But over the course of the production process, she acknowledges they often change. In the case of You Were Never Really Here, what drew her to Ames's novel was the character of Joe. A vigilante with a past in the military, he has an abusive childhood which follows him around. Ramsay described him to her lead actor Joaquin Phoenix as having a head full of broken glass. As they explored this character further, Phoenix and Ramsay both felt that Ames's plotting was getting in the way of exploring that character. In the book, where everything is stylised by Ames's noirish prose, you can accept some of the conspiracy plotting as part of a narrative which also deals with emotional trauma, because everything feels very much of a piece. You are always reminded that it's still the same book, it's still Ames writing it. During production, Phoenix complained about some of the gadgets and stealth techniques Joe was using, saying they didn't fit with his conception of a character who is already introduced to us at the very start of the film as being suicidal. Why would he care that much about not being caught? Ramsay allowed Phoenix to follow his own sense of emotional truth with the character, largely because she was starting to feel the same way as well. She removed a lot of the conspiracy plot, apologising to Alessandro Nivola, who she says was excellent in the deleted scenes, for nevertheless getting rid of most of the scenes with his character. The whole thing was reshaped in order to build a home for the performance Phoenix was giving. Is it worth it? Ames seems to like the film, and Phoenix's performance won Best Actor at the 2017 Cannes Film Festival, so you'd have to say any accommodation that could be made for that performance was worthwhile. Part of the pleasure of You Were Never Really Here is that you can always see the pulp infrastructure beneath Ramsay's film. You can imagine, say, Europa Corp buying the rights to it and making a serviceable enough Liam Neeson action movie out of it. But that's not the film Ramsay and Phoenix wanted to make, and in the end, I think they made the right decisions. The third category is simply films that are better than the source material. It shouldn't be taboo to say that, though. To some people it really is. It's strange because there are so many great filmmakers, from Francis Ford Coppola to Luis Buñuel, who have made films out of novels they did not respect. Orson Welles famously went into movie studios and asked what the worst book they had the rights to was, on the basis that his creativity would be less inhibited if he wasn't worried about ruining a masterpiece. But it's easy to make something better than something which is bad. Let's go for the big guns. Let's talk Shakespeare. King Lear is one of Shakespeare's most experimental and moving plays. It contains a heavy, complex plot. It also contains some of his most evocative and disturbing writing. When it's cut down from its standard epic theatrical length, that can be a bit hard to digest. The motor of the play, in terms of who is doing things for most of it, is Lear's daughters Regan and Goneril. Lear, by contrast, is often off wandering the wastelands. If it's cut unwisely, it can make Lear seem like a bystander in his own play. There's also the matter of the blinding of Gloucester. This is carried out at the behest of Regan, and up until the 20th century it was mostly performed off stage. People in the 19th century couldn't believe that Shakespeare had written something as bleak and violent as Lear, and went to all sorts of ridiculous measures, including writing a new, happy ending for it, in order to get around that cognitive dissonance. In the 20th and 21st centuries, it's come back on stage, but there is a problem with it. The blinding of Gloucester can be played in such an extreme way that it rather overshadows the rest of the story. I mean, who has the sympathy to spare for some old man who used to be king when you've just seen a guy's eyes gouged out? The best solution to this problem exists in the most radical reworking of King Lear that exists. I'm talking about Akira Kurosawa's Ran, which transposes the action of the play to samurai-era Japan. That change of setting already forces a lot of changes. Lear's daughters are now Lear's sons, as the samurai line was passed down through male heirs exclusively. There's also something more shocking in the depiction of Lear wandering the wasteland after being dethroned. A samurai is supposed to die with honour, and also his sons are supposed to respect him in old age. All of those changes are pretty involuntary. Kurosawa didn't make them so much as he realised they were inevitable once the story was transposed. The big change that he does make is to the blinding of Gloucester. In Ran, this has happened before the play even starts. Lear encounters the Gloucester figure wandering through the same moors that he's wandering through. And the blinding is not one that Regan, his daughter, performed, it's one that he himself ordered. Kurosawa's Lear prepares himself for some sort of duel or retribution, or even to surrender his own life for Gloucester's honour, but it never comes. Gloucester, to Lear's discomfort, forgives him. Now this has several effects. Firstly, the very un-samurai morality of Gloucester's forgiveness is another way that Kurosawa uses to explore the theme of Japan changing. It signals even more vividly than the gunfire and near World War I level of violence that deposes Lear, that Lear's version of Japan is gone now. But also, it answers a question that every adaptation of King Lear has to struggle with. If, as his court describe him, Lear is a just and good ruler, how did he have such terrible children? If, on the other hand, you make Regan and Goneril the inevitable results of Lear's authoritarian ruling style, you do sort of lessen the tragedy. I mean, it's no tragedy when a bad king gets deposed. The tragedy of Lear in Ran is not that he's a good ruler that's deposed, it's that he's a pretty bad ruler who realises that there was a different path, but realises it far too late to do anything about it. It's a big change, and yes, I'm going to say it, it's better than what Shakespeare wrote. The fourth category is if it's adapted by Shane Black. Look, that bit with the Mandarin in Iron Man 3 is actually